Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
There's a new law in California that had everybody writing to me yesterday and overnight because the new law gives used car buyers a 3-day cooling off period. And this is the thing you have to understand. It's the biggest misapprehension in the field of automobile law or in the field of consumer protection law in general. And I can tell you to this day, after 34 years of practicing law, to this day, I still get phone calls and emails from people who say, Steve, I bought a car 2 days ago. Quick, I need help. And I know what they're getting at. But when I talk to them, I say, well, why do you need help so quickly when you're just bought the car 2 days ago? They go, I need to do something before the 3 days is up. What 3 days? Don't I get 3 days to return a car? No, you don't. And up until this law got passed, that was just something people misunderstood. There is often limited circumstances in some states, depending on what situation we're talking about, where you can return something with a 3-day cooling off period. But for instance, in Michigan, we're talking about a law called the Home Solicitation Sales Act. If a salesman comes into your home and sells you something and then leaves, you got 3 days to cancel that sale in most situations. However, I've never heard of a situation where it applied to cars because I've never heard of a car salesman coming into somebody's home to sell them a car. I understand there's nuances to this. I'm glossing over it on purpose because I've yet to get the phone call from somebody who legitimately had a right to return their car after 3 days. But the new law in California includes that among other things. So we have to understand what's going on here because it's Senate Bill 766, recently signed into law by the governor, will give buyers 3 days to return a car, no questions asked. Brian White wrote the story for CBS8.com. The law does not go into effect until next year. And between now and then, a lot can happen. So we'll get there. But first, you know that buying a used car can feel like a gamble. And for some, regret sets in soon as they leave the lot. But a new California law aims to ease that anxiety, often called buyer's remorse, by giving car buyers a second chance to reconsider. The governor signed the Combating Auto Retail Scams Act, or CARS Act, which introduces a 3-day cooling off period for used car purchases under $50,000. Over 50, doesn't apply. Under 50, yes. The law is designed to protect consumers from buyer's remorse and high-pressure sales tactics, particularly in a market where used car transactions can be complex and emotional. Under the new law, buyers can return a used vehicle within 3 days as long as they've driven it less than 400 miles. The only cost of the buyer will be a restocking fee, which ranges from $200 to $600, depending on the car's price. Now, the president of the Consumers for Auto Reliability and Safety, or CARS, says you don't have to prove anything. You don't even have to have an explanation. It's just, I don't want it. I want out of this deal. And the law requires the dealer to give you a refund, except for that restocking fee. Experts say the measure addresses one of the biggest concerns in used car buying. And so the director of insights at Edmunds says when it comes to used cars, trust is the biggest issue. You're removing the biggest barrier to entry by giving people a cooling off period. The law will also apply to certain commercial vehicles, including cars purchased for rideshare services or small business use. Because keep in mind that a lot of consumer protection laws don't cover vehicles purchased for a commercial use. So if you're an Uber or Lyft driver and the car is your livelihood, or if you have a small business, like if you're a carpet cleaner with a few vans, you're covered under that return policy. The person from the Consumers for Auto Reliability and Safety said. She's also been fighting for car buyer protection since the 1970s. Her advocacy began in San Diego, where she once picketed a dealership in Lemon Grove after learning of their unfair business practices. They tried to have me arrested, she said. All these nice, hardworking people were coming up to me and telling me about their car buying experiences. There were a lot of lemons in those days. Now, in addition to the return window, the CARS Act will also require greater transparency from car dealerships. Dealers will have to clearly disclose pricing and explain any optional add-ons such as service contracts or theft protection plans. Now it can just be about the car. You don't have to worry about a lot of other things. Is this the right car for me? Because if you can return the vehicle, then guess what? That eliminates all your other worries. The CARS Act will go into effect in October of 2026. It only applies to used car purchases made at licensed dealerships not private sales between individuals. There's a bunch of things happening here, and there's other portions of the statute. It's so far down the road, I'll probably revisit this again. But basically, it addresses you have the right to return the car within 3 days, and it addresses what kind of disclosures they must make regarding other things tacked onto the sale. And they've got to also give you, for instance, like an out-the-door price about the vehicle itself and so on. And they actually talk about extras such as nitrogen-filled tires and so on. But the real question I have is, so I buy a used car under $50,000 in California. I've got 3 days to think about it and then possibly return it for a restocking fee, but return it. And guess what? I'm out driving it a day later, and the engine explodes. So I have the car towed back to the dealership, but I don't want it anymore. Why not? Engine exploded. Oh, you can't return it. Why not? You damaged the car. It says you can only return the car if it's not damaged. You're going to say, I didn't damage the car. The engine exploded. They're going to go, well, it left our lot without damage. It's been returned to our lot with damage. We didn't damage it. And now you're going to say, but Steve, obviously the law is designed to address that, isn't it? Well, once in a while, brand new laws have things that need to be litigated. Because if I'm the car seller, I'm going to say, I think you abused the engine. You're probably racing it. You probably were over revving it. You're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. All I know is it ran perfectly well when we sold it to you. You drove it off the lot. You had to have it towed back in. And so I suspect there's going to be lots of fights over things like that, because obviously if the person makes it through the 3-day period and keeps the car, we'll never hear about that again. But all the cars that get returned, why are they being returned? If they're being returned because they're defective, the argument then becomes, well, it became defective while it was in your possession, you damaged it. And so I just see a lot of litigation on that. But I also see some other problems. And the car dealers in the audience, and I know there's a few, the question I have is this. I don't know the story in California, but I know that the states quite often want dealerships to turn their paperwork in quickly when they sell a car. So I sell you a car, you sign a bunch of documents, you give me the money, I throw you the keys, you leave. I got to take this paperwork and take it to the Secretary of State's office in Michigan or the DMV in California and process it to get you your title and your registration, but also to pay the taxes. The state wants their tax money, their tax dollars. So let's suppose that I go and do all that, and 3 days later you come back and go, I want my money back. So I got to give you your money back, take the keys back, and now I've got to undo this transaction? Or does the law actually allow me to wait 3 days before submitting the paperwork to make sure you haven't changed your mind? Because I see a problem there also. Because if the state still says, no, you file that paperwork pronto so we get our tax dollars, and then someone returns the car, and I've got to unwind the deal with the state, that's going to be a mess. It's hard enough to get them to do their jobs when they're putting a deal together. To unwind a deal? I picture that taking some time. That's going to be a problem. But I'm going to let you know right now, the fact that this is called the Combating Auto Retail Scams Act, or the CARS Act, they got that acronym from a federal statute that was passed previously. A federal statute that would have covered all 50 states and elsewhere if, in fact, it hadn't been struck down by a court. And it got struck down by a court and was never revived. Nobody bothered to pursue it. So there was a statute on the books that a court ruled unenforceable, and that became the end of that. And so the people in Sacramento who got together and passed this bill in California, I read several articles. And one of them quoted one of the people behind this law who said, I saw that statute. I thought it was a good statute. So it may have gotten struck down nationally, but we can implement it as a state law here. So it doesn't take some kind of soothsayer to see what's going to happen here. There's going to be litigation between now and October because this law does not go into effect for 1 year. And if you think that car dealers are this morning training their salespeople for an impending law a year down the road, that's not what's going on. Right now, they're contacting their lobbying groups and the organizations that represent them saying, this statute's a nightmare. We don't want this. Go find out how they got that federal statute struck down and strike this one down. And so I'm not going to predict how that's going to work because that's going to require prognostications with respect to the California state court system. But I'm reasonably certain that a lawsuit will get filed challenging this statute, and it'll work its way through the system. And the question is whether it'll work its way through the system between now and October of next year. So a couple things to keep in mind is there has been a law passed which, if it goes into effect and is not modified or affected by court rulings, will give used car buyers a 3-day cooling off period in California when they purchase a vehicle for under $50,000 from an actual licensed dealer. Okay? You'll have to pay a restocking fee, but that's it. That will go into effect along with some other laws regarding disclosure. But October of next year is a long way off. I could do the math, but I'm a busy man. So we'll see what happens. But it's interesting because now when people call me and say, I thought I had 3 days, I'm going to have to say only in California and only under certain circumstances and only starting next year. There you go. Thanks to everybody who sent from CBS8.com. Brian White wrote that new California law gives used car buyers a 3-day cooling off period on certain cars under certain circumstances beginning next year. Questions or comments? Put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice.